Hey yo, Nyakun here, and today I have a small but mighty update that I want to give you on Moreblocks Chrome extension. And with this new update that is coming, is going to add at least 6 new features that are going to enhance the way that you use the Chrome extension. Mostly we're going to focus on the variable handlers and the variable overlay. 1 or 2 additions in there with other stuff, but mostly the variable overlay is what we are going to focus on. So without talking too much, I just want to head into it and then show you what this new update will bring. So this is going to be Moreblocks version 2.5.2. All right, first things first, let's try and add something to our screen. All right, so I'm going to just add a section, but I want to toggle my Chrome extension and go into my CSS and make sure that my variable overlay is enabled by clicking on this button, and then we can close it. All right, so from here we should be able to access the overlay. Back into our layout, inside the gap, let's click on this, and then I'm going to drag this to this side. All right, so the new addition that is coming is mostly going to focus on something that I call the lock mechanism. And the lock mechanism works in this way. Right now that we do have our overlay, the lock mechanism is not implemented or it's not toggled on. So I'm going to try and then work on other stuff. So you can see that when I click on the background side, the overlay just goes away because the overlay stays when you have triggered it by clicking on an input field. So if I click back on this input field, it's going to show. If I click back on this input field too, it's going to show. But when I start interacting with something else that is not an input field, then it is going to close. So that is where we are when it comes to that. So I thought that it would be wise to add a mechanism to lock it so that it doesn't disappear when you start working on the side. And that is what we have implemented. So I'm going to click on this and back into this spot. There is a new icon here that looks like a lock. You can just click here to toggle it on. Now, if I go back and I start working on different part of the canvas, you can see that the overlay is still visible for you to use without having to click on here for it to pop up again. And with this, it will also persist if you do refresh your browser, close your browser and come back. So it is really an important addition when it comes to making sure that you have access to the overlay at all times. If you do not want to keep seeing it, you can unlock it, and then when you start working on the side, it goes away. So that is what the lock mechanism is about. The next thing that I want to show you is we have implemented indicators for you to know that a pill or a variable has been added or used within your code. And this is how that works. So let's say we come back in here. Let's go into, we just want to use something. So let's say we're just going to use the gap. Let's click back here. Our overlay shows that we don't have any other variable loaded. That is why we do see only these ones. But let's lock it up. Let's make sure that we just want to click on someone's. So when you click on this, what happens is it adds this indicator over there. So what this indicator does is it gives you the ability to know that that very variable has been used within your project. The reason why this is also really good is that anytime you click on these variables, you generate a list of variables that you can go back to copy and use in your final project. So if you did use a color as we used over here, it is stored within the root file within the Chrome extension, so that at the end of your development, you can go back and then copy it. And if you remember, when you click on this, it is going to copy every variable that you have used when you were building your project. Also, the dot can be removed. So when I click on this, the dot is removed. The reason why you'd want to remove it is because most of the time you might have been just going through the process of determining what you want to use and what you do not want to use. And at the end of your project, you might not want that very variable added into your root project because you might not have used it. So you don't want something that you didn't use to still be added to the root file. So you have the ability to remove it entirely from here. All right. The next thing that I want to show you with the lock mechanism is that, let's say we've added a few more, right? A few more of this. Okay, so we add all of these to your project, and let's say there is a ton of variables when you start loading like your entire variable system, right? So you might have you have to scroll all the way down to go in and remove this one after the other. Maybe you don't want to do that, and I've implemented a way for you to clear the entire indicators and your entire root file. Remember, anytime an indicator is removed, it removes it also from the generated files. So if you want to clear the entire board of all the indicators and also clear the entire board of all the root files generated, all you can do is when you come back over here, because when you click on this copies your root file, right? When you click on this, it's going to ask you, clear all generated styles. Are you sure you want to clear it? If you were sure that you want to actually clear it, just click on this. You can see that all the indicators are now gone, and your root file will also be empty because the indicators correspond to the generated roots that you can copy at the end of your project. So that is that when it comes to the dot indicator. So we've talked about three things. We talked about the lock mechanism. We've talked about the dot for the variables itself, and then the dot to clear the entire variable used, and the variables that have been generated for you to use after your project. So those are the things that we have talked about. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is the code that is generated after you have used all the variables. From the beginning of the launch, when I showed you the code generated, everything was mixed together. The fonts, the colors, the pattern. After you click on your generate files, you can see that all of them are mixed together. And that is definitely not how it should be. So with this new update, all the files that are generated after you have clicked on any of the variables will now come truly organized, so that it is easy for you to know where this is and where that is. And to show you that, what we are going to do is we are going to go into our Chrome extension, and then in here we want to make sure that we do have all our variables so that I can show you how it's going to be like. So let's copy a root template. Go into global, go into code. Let's add a style. Then we're going to paste that in there and then close it. You can save this. And then from there, we are going to, let's refresh this and then extract everything from here. So we have extracted all the variables that we just copied from our root template. All right, we can close this. The next thing that I want to show you is how the files are generated. So let's go back in here. Let's drag this to this side. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a few more of these, totally unnecessary, but let's go through all of this, right? And then I'm going to click on this very thing to copy our file. The next thing I want to do is I want to show you how the file looks like. I'm going to go into code again, add a new sheet, open it up. Let's drag this to the side and then let me paste this in here. So if you still remember the first, as I said, the first video that I did when it came to the generated files, everything was jumbo. But this now is more organized. There is a better naming system, and it shows you what each and every one of these things they do. All right, so that is good for the generated file. Now, what I'm going to show you is that at the moment, if you are using the overlay, anytime your files are generated and you refresh your page, you close your page, or even if you close the overlay, the code generated goes away, meaning that the entire function is useless if after just a refresh, the entire code goes away. So now there's a new update. With this new update that is coming, every code that is generated now is stored within your own computer that is within the extension, so that when you do close it, you refresh your page, you turn off your computer and you come back, you'll still be able to access it. So I'm going to click back here. This is the code that we were dealing with, and then I am going to paste it, right? And then let's save this. Let me refresh my page. Then let's click back on here, go into layout and click here. From here, what I'm going to do is, since we already copied this, it is still in the clipboard. So we have to make sure that it is not. So I'm going to copy this, right? Go back into our global settings, go into code, open the style sheet. I'm going to paste this in here so we know that this is the current thing that we've copied. All right, going back here, let's click on here to see whether the file is still available. Let's paste it. You can see that the file now persists regardless of whether you've refreshed your page or not. So that is the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. So we've talked about the indicators, we've talked about clearing all the indicators, we've talked about the lock mechanism, I've also talked about the root file, and I've talked about how the root file also persists. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is a new addition to, let me drag this on the side. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the new addition to, I want to save this and then let's open a CSS. Okay, so the new addition to the root template. To show you, I can even drag this on this side. So let's go into our global, and then this is the one that we added. So let's open it here. So if you go into the file right now in your Chrome extension, in Moreblocks Chrome extension, and you copy the root template, you are going to find that there's a new list of variables that are available for you to use. So these are grid variables. All right, so this is for like the grid repeat, and then this is for spanning some of the grids out. So I'm going to show you how this one actually works. All right, so now I want to show you how the grid template, they actually work. So let's add a new section. Then in here, we are going to go and then we will choose advanced layout. Let's choose grid. And then for grid, you do have these options, whether you just want to use this grid output, this grid input, or this grid template input. Whatever one that you choose, you can still use it. And from there, you have to go all the way down and then you have to look for grid template. So this is grid template. So from 1 grid to 12, which is really good. So let's say within this section, we are going to add a few divs in there. So div number 1, number 2, number 3, and then number 4. Selecting back our section, choosing back the grid or the grid template, whichever one you want to use. You can scroll all the way back down to your template, right? And then let's say we want to create a grid of 2. Just click on 2. It inputs the value over there for a grid of 2. Now let's go and say that we want to give it a gap, right? So going all the way down, we are looking for space. I think space is the last one. Let's give it 16 pixels or 1 rep. All right. Now let's try and check responsiveness. Okay, so on mobile, on this mobile landscape, you do have it for a 2. If let's say for you on this part, you don't want it to be a 2, you just want it to be a 1. So the question will be, can you make this also responsive? Yes, you can. So clicking back on your grid template, you can go all the way down And then you can input here grid of 1, and that's it. It is not going to affect any of the other breakpoints that you already set, which follows the initial grid system that you did. So when you come back here, it also works. All right, then we do have grid span. And with that, I'm going to duplicate this. Okay, and then I'm going to go and this is desktop. So let's say within desktop, I'm going to select this div, and then let's do Shift F. Type in grid so that the grid options will show up for this individual div. From there, I want this to span to the end of it. So from this end, which is a 1, to the end of it, which is -1. Or if you know the number of columns that you have, which is ours is 2, we can go all the way up and we can span it to be a 2. So whichever way that you want, you can choose this, or you can go back and then choose this one also. Sometimes let's focus on here, and then let's choose this. So you can see that this spans out from 1 to -1. Now let's check on responsiveness. So you go down, you go down, go down. You can see that it worked perfectly. So on this side, it's still spanning 2. On this side, it's still spanning 2 or the entire width. So this is the new grid layout variable that has been added to your root file. So you can go in there, copy the root file, paste it into your code. If you've made any changes to the root file that you copied initially, you have to make sure that you do not override it with the new one. So that is that for Moreblocks version 2.5.2. And I hope that this update makes you building breakdance website much more easier. Thank you for watching. Hopefully better and more updates are on the way. Nyakun here.